Hey everyone, this is Mr. US History. Welcome back to a brand new video. Well, as you know, I've been a critic of the political compass test and other political ideology tests, and because of that, I, along with the help of Pranav Madanidi, created the 13 Scales political test. Yes, you can see my name over here, and this is the 13 Scales political test. I think it's a much better version than the political compass test because it tests very different issues. It tests left versus right in a very different way, and what I think is the best way to test left versus right. And it also tests the up versus down scales very differently. So let's get into this political ideology test that me and Pranav created. So let's first look at the info page. So this tests 13 different scales. In many ways, this is similar to the 9 axes or 8 values political tests. And the 13 scales tested are populism versus establishmentarianism, equality versus hierarchy, protection versus free trade, intervention versus laissez-faire, racial equality versus the status quo, feminism versus traditional, open borders versus closed, liberty versus morality, pro-LGBTQIA versus anti-LGBTQIA, critical versus loyal, centralist versus confederalist, humanitarian versus productivist, and then militaristic versus pacifistic. So, these are the 13 skills that are tested, and after you finish taking the test, you get an overall stance. The stances are either reactionary, which would be far on the right, conservative, which is just very strongly on the right, center right, which is going to be barely right wing, moderate, which is going to be exactly in the middle, center left, which is barely left wing, liberal, which is strongly on the left, and progressive, which is far to the left. So those are the stances, and you would get assigned one of these along with the percentage that would tell you what percentage left versus what percentage right wing you are. And furthermore, you would also get these ideologies. These ideologies include traditionalist conservatism, paleoconservatism, neoconservatism, and so on. These ideologies, I have a total of 18, I believe, ideologies over here. You would get assigned one of these ideologies along with an overall stance with what percentage you are to either the left or to the right. And you would also get your composition for all of these scales as well. So that is overall how the test works. So ultimately, let me show you how the results are to work. Now, these aren't my own views, but I'm just going to randomly do a few of these questions just to show you guys what the results are going to look like. So the thing is also some of the results and some of these questions are a lot more extreme than others. For example, the abortion should be banned in almost every circumstance is meant to be an extreme question towards the right, where if you say agree, you get pushed more further to the right than you normally would be for any given question. So these kind of questions are left wing versus right wing kind of questions. Again, I'm not answering these how I actually view, I'm just answering randomly so I can ultimately show you guys the results. And then for foreign policy, how it ultimately works is these are the issues. The main issues for foreign policy are just regarding whether you think America should be focused on human rights or be focused on economic interest when it comes to foreign diplomacy. That is the main concern here. So, when you ultimately go to the final answers of this test and you ultimately click the submit button, see my results, what you would ultimately see are these are the results. You would get your results for all of these 13 scales, which would put you at each percentage for each scale, a lot like the 9 axes or the 8 values political tests. And then for the political compass, you have 3 different options. For economic and class issues, effectively, right wing for this represents you want more capitalism and you want a system that effectively protects hierarchies. Well, if you're more left wing, you want less hierarchies and you want more economic equality and you are more skeptical of capitalism. That's how right versus left works on economics. And then on economics, this is how up versus down works. Up relates to wanting more government intervention in the economy and more protectionism, while down represents wanting a more laissez-faire economy with more free trade. So that's overall how economic and class issues works according to this political test when it comes to the ultimate compass on economic and class issues. And unlike the political compass test, which just has one compass, this test has three compasses, which are economic and class issues, like I already mentioned, social issues, and foreign policy. For social issues, if you're more socially right wing, that means you're more traditionalistic on social issues. Well, if you're more left wing, you tend to want more social change. You tend to advocate for the rights of more marginalized historic groups. And that is overall the difference there. Versus up and down on social issues largely has to do with how centralized do you think the federal government should be. If you want more states' rights and a more decentralized government, you are more likely to be down. Well, if you want a stronger federal government to enforce your social agenda, you would be more up. For foreign policy, like I mentioned earlier, more right means you're more focused on your nation's economic interest, while more left means that you're more focused on humanitarianism and protecting humanitarian rights across the globe. That's what you think your nation's foreign policy aim should be. And then up versus down when it comes to foreign policy largely has to do with how interventionist you think your country should be. If you think your country should be more interventionist in foreign policy, then you would be further up. But if you think your country should be more isolationist and also less militaristic, then you would be more down when it comes to foreign policy. So overall, a foreign policy that promotes more active military engagement would be up, while a foreign policy that prefers a more pacifistic approach with less military involvement would be more down. So that's how these political scales work ultimately at the end of the day, and that's how this political compass works. So overall, there you go. That is the new political test that me and Brent have created. I hope you guys would take this test, give it a look, and give me your feedback in the comments below. How good of a test do you think this is? Give me some feedback also on what you think could be improved. So anyways, you guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure to like this video down below and subscribe to the channel. And please take a look at this test. Mr. US History, out.